Pink Bean is a strange creature from another dimension who serves as a major boss in the Temple of Time. In an attempt to summon the Maple World's overarching villain, the Black Mage, Kirsten broke into the Temple of Time and forced his way through the Gate of the Past. He used the Mirror of the Goddess, a relic which was capable of physically moving the past to summon Black Mage. However, this relic was only usable by the goddess, and thus resulted in an inadvertent summoning of Pink Bean. This creature, which has become a fan favorite mascot of MapleStory over the years, was once the most difficult and most ridiculous boss in MapleStory. Let's go back and take a look at the original release of this cute monster. Welcome to MMO Histories, Pink Bean. MapleStory has different regions across the world, each region being potentially different from each other. The two most brought up regions, however, are GMS, which is Global MapleStory, and KMS, which is Korean MapleStory. Dates on content release, stats on items, etc. are different between these servers, but for consistency purposes, all dates in this video will be according to the GMS version of MapleStory. Pink Bean is a boss in MapleStory added on the 24th of June 2009, located deep inside the Temple of Time at the Twilight of Gods. As far as lore goes, this creature doesn't have much. Nexon simply designed Pink Bean as a creature from another world. To access this boss, there is a series of pre-quests that you had to complete, all done within the Temple of Time. These quests involve taking out a certain number of mobs in each area of the Temple of Time, in addition to killing each area boss for a specific mini-boss drop. Let's take a look at the overarching map. At the start of the map, you'll notice three gates: the Gate to the Future, Gate of the Present, and the Gate of the Past. The Gate of the Future leads you to a separate area inside the Temple of Time where a dystopian future of Hennesis, Erive, and Pyrrhion, which are three major cities in the Maple World, await. The Gate of the Present leads you to the Arcane River, the main map for players level 200+ after completing their 5th job advancement. Finally, the Gate of the Past, which leads further into the Temple of Time. For the purposes of this video, only the Gate of the Past matters, and so I will only be covering that gate. The Gate of the Past is mainly consisted of three areas, or roads in this case: Memory Lane, the Road of Regret, and the Road to Oblivion. Each road is consisted of 5 maps, with a singular map separating each road. The map layout goes as such: Memory Lanes 1 to 5, the Frozen Past, Road of Regret 1 to 5, the Burning Past, Road to Oblivion 1 to 5, Broken Corridor, and finally the Forgotten Twilight, which is the map you enter the Twilight of Gods from. I've left out a few rooms to the side, but we'll get back to those later. Now that we have a better understanding of the layout of Temple of Time, we can start looking at the Pink Bean pre-quests. There are quite a lot of kill quests in this chain, so bear with me if it gets a bit repetitive. To start the quest, you'll need to speak to the Temple Keeper at the map with the 3 doors. The Temple Keeper will task you with 5 consecutive kill quests where you have to kill 100 mobs from each of the memory lanes. All the numbers in these quests have been nerfed a few times since launch, from originally 999 to 333, then 200, and now 100. After defeating these mobs, you are tasked with defeating Dodo, the Whale of Time. This is the area boss of Memory Lane at Memory Lane 5. Dodo is a mini-boss, so it only spawns every couple of hours. This can be somewhat bypassed by switching channels, the equivalent of switching layers in WoW or instances in Final Fantasy XIV if you're familiar with those. After you've defeated Dodo and returned to the Temple Keeper, your character will report that they cannot pass through Memory Lane 5. This is because Dodo, the Whale of Time, eats memories for sustenance, and a part of your memory was eaten by Dodo in your battle with it. Because of your lost memory, you cannot pass through Memory Lane. You'll be asked to head to the Memory Keeper's room, which is one of the rooms branching from Memory Lane. Speaking to the Memory Keeper, you'll be tasked with speaking to someone from your first job advancement in order to get back some of your character's memories and to complete this quest. Going back to the Temple Keeper, you'll be asked again to defeat 100 mobs from each of the Road of Regrets and to defeat Lilynoosh, the area boss at Road of Regrets 5. Returning to the Temple Keeper, he'll tell you about how Lilynoosh was the goddess's most loyal knight, and to make sure his emotions never got in the way of his missions, he froze his emotions. And now that you've come into contact with him, you've been affected by this power. And someone who doesn't have emotions cannot pass through the Road of Regrets, as they cannot experience regret. He'll tell you to head to the Sorcerer's Room, which, like the Memory Keeper's room, is a room branched off of the main path. The Sorcerer will give you a potion for 1 million Mesos, the in-game currency. This potion will kill you, but is necessary in order to complete the quest. After respawning, your character's frozen emotions will be unthawed as you've been brought to the brink of death. Finally, the same pattern occurs and you're asked to defeat 100 mobs from each of the Road to Oblivions and to defeat Laika, the area boss, at Road to Oblivion 5. Once again, you'll be unable to head further into the Temple of Time, and so you theorize with the Temple Keeper that perhaps your Oblivion got burnt away, which, in his own words, doesn't even make sense. He will suggest that you meet with the Record Keeper located near the end of the Road to Oblivion. As that occurs, the reason why you cannot go in further is less complicated than expected. There is a force field blocking outsiders from entering, set by an intruder. At this point, you'll need 10 smiley masks, 10 neutral masks, and 10 frowny masks, which drop from the mobs on each of the roads, and one specific boss drop from each of the area bosses. The Temple Keeper will use these items to create the Marble of Chaos, which will allow you to break through the force field and marks the end of the Pink Bean prequests. Upon entering the Twilight of Gods, you'll notice Kirsten, a dark magician and follower of the Black Mage. Upon interacting with him, he will summon Pink Bean. Pink Bean on launch was without a doubt the most dangerous monster in MapleStory, being the record holder for the highest HP, with Pink Bean itself having 2.1 billion and the whole fight having an effective HP of 7.65 billion in the game. It did enough damage to kill a max level 200 character in one hit. To put into perspective the ridiculosity of these numbers, the max damage that could be done back then, that is the cap of damage that a single move could do, was 199,999. That means Pink Bean could have taken 38,250 hits from a max damage move. And only a very select few classes at max level was hitting max damage in 2009. On top of that, the people who were level 200 at the time were also few and far between, as leveling was a very tedious grind, every level taking a long time from level 50 onwards. Pink Bean was a 30-player raid. Let's take a look at the classes and jobs available back then, as there weren't that many. For clarity's sake, I'm going to refer to classes as the starting type you pick from the character creation, and jobs as the spec that you pick from the classes. Starting with the original 4 Explorer classes: Warriors, Bowmen, Thieves, and Mages. Warriors could choose from 3 jobs: Hero, Paladin, and Dark Knight. Heroes were centered around bossing. They have amazing speed, HP, and damage, with the cons of being a bad leveler. Paladins have great defense and health, with the design focus on elemental buffs which they can use to buff themselves with. Dark Knights are a tanky class that use HP to use specific skills and provide a very well known buff, Hyper Body, which increases the max HP and max MP of party members for 5 minutes at max rank. Bowmen could choose from 2 jobs, Bowmaster and Marksman. Bowmaster have good DPM or damage per minute due to their speed. They have 2 essential skills: Hurricane, a consistent damage skill as long as you hold the keybind down, and Sharp Eyes, a party buff which allows your party members to locate an enemy's weak spot to deal more damage. Marksmen sacrifice the attack speed that Bowmasters have to deal big numbers. A notable skill that Marksmen have is Snipe, a skill that does insane damage with a cooldown of 5 seconds at max rank. They also have the Sharp Eyes buff that Bowmasters have. Thieves had 2 job choices as well, Nightlord and Shadower. Nightlord is well known for being ridiculously fast and strong at the cost of low HP and bad defense. Their buff Shadow Partner is essentially a shadow clone for 3 minutes. This job was in competition for being the best DPM in the game, provided it had funding with Sharp Eyes and Hyper Body. Shadower is far more tanky than Nightlord since it has iframes but has middle of the pack damage. Their most damaging move is Meso Explosion, which costs Mesos to do. To balance this out, this job gets more Mesos than all the other classes due to its Meso Mastery skill, which increases the amount of Mesos that drops. Mages had 3 job choices: Fire Poison Archmage, Ice Lightning Archmage, and Bishop. Fire Poison is a unique job that's focused around stacking poison dots and using fire explosions. They are in the middle of the pack for DPM, but still deal more damage than the other mage jobs. Ice Lightning is well known for its mobbing ability, but limited bossing. They have a unique debuff that they can apply called Freeze, but this isn't really useful for bosses. Finally, Bishop, the most wanted job in this fight due to a variety of reasons. This, as expected, is a job that's focused on supporting whilst also having the best mobbing skill in the game, Genesis, a spammable skill that hits the whole map. In fact, this skill was so good it was argued to be the best skill in all of MapleStory. Bishops also have a unique ability to resurrect dead players. This is truly essential. Dying in MapleStory back then is entirely different from dying now. When you died, you used to get an XP penalty that scales with your level and an item drop rate loss debuff for 30 minutes. Nowadays, you are punished far less. To extend this into boss fights, you used to be out of the fight completely when you died unless you had a bishop res. Nowadays when you die, you get rezzed but takes 1 count off the death counter. For these reasons, the res on bishop was an absolutely invaluable asset to have. Following the original 4 explorers, there was only one other class that was available at the time of Pink Bean's release, also being an explorer, pirates. Pirates had 2 job options to choose from, Buccaneer and Corsair. Buccaneers are all about using their fists and bare legs as weapons. They have 2 great party buffs, Speed Infusion, which raises the party's attack speed, and Time Leap, which resets all cooldowns in the party. This class provides good party buffs and has high burst damage in trade-off for having low DPM. Corsairs are gunmen, and like Nightlord, they sacrifice HP for damage. This class has high range, good damage, and most importantly, can summon and get inside a battleship for optimal damage output. Those were the 12 jobs available to take into the Pink Bean fight. The jobs that were usually considered more favourably were Bowmasters and Marksmen for their Sharp Eyes buff, Nightlords for their insane single target damage, Dark Knights for their Hyper Body buff, Bishops, and Buccaneers for their Time Leap. The max party limit is 6 players, and so 30 players would be broken down into 5 parties of 6 members each. Each party would ideally consist of a Dark Knight for Hyper Body and a Bishop for reasons I will explain very soon. As for the other jobs, we can split the team composition into melee and range parties to get a better idea. 2 melee parties and 3 range parties. For the melee parties, the remaining 4 positions can be taken by any melee. For the range parties, however, there would most likely be a Bowmaster and most likely Nightlords for their high damage. Now that we know what kind of composition to expect going into Pink Bean, let's take a look at the fight mechanics themselves. Note that the numbers here are referring to the original numbers at launch. When you enter the room, you'll notice there are 5 statues before Pink Bean even spawns and a 60-minute timer. The raid has to take down each of the statues before they can hit Pink Bean. In the game's current state, you are able to hit all the statues at once, but in the past, the statues activated one by one after being defeated. The fight is broken down into 6 phases. Each phase will have you defeat the previous phase's monsters as well as a new monster until the 6th, where it is just Pink Bean. The order of the statue phases go as such: Solomon the Wise, Rex the Wise, Hugin, Moonin, and Ariel. All of these statues have a physical and magic defense rate of 60%, with Pink Bean having 70%. Pink Bean will play around, potentially casting buffs on the statues and debuffs on the raid. The strategy of this fight heavily relies on pre-positioning before each of the phases, the order to defeat each of the statues in, and the ability to read Pink Bean's animations in the last phase. Many phases in this fight will require parties to position in a certain way in order to avoid certain mechanics. The first phase requires you to defeat Solomon the Wise, the statue on the leftmost side of the map. Solomon had an HP pool of 300 million and has 3 attacks. The first attack is a lightning attack that can seal. Sealing is a debuff where upon receiving, you'll have a padlock on top of your character. In this state, you cannot use skills, making this debuff quite lethal. This debuff can be removed by bishops using their Dispel skill or by consuming holy water. The second attack is an attack that can reduce your HP and MP to 1 and then stun you. The third and last attack slams its staff into the ground, dealing physical damage and inflicting slow. This phase is pretty straightforward. The raid had to DPS Solomon down without taking too much time, as the fight's 60-minute timer was very tight. Phase 2 requires you to defeat both Solomon again, remember that every phase builds up upon the previous one, and Rex the Wise on the right side most of the map. Rex, like Solomon, has 300 million HP, 3 attacks, and 1 additional skill that you have to look out for. His first attack is a lightning attack that can inflict darkness. Having darkness will cause this icon to pop above your character's head. This is a status effect that reduces your vision, leaving only your character to be visible. This can only be removed by Bishop's Dispel. The second attack is an attack that reduces your HP and MP to 1 and can cause Undead, or otherwise known as Zombify. I'll refer to this debuff as Undead for the rest of this video though. Undead is a status effect that's shown with 3 skulls with the dark aura. In this state, the effect of potions are reduced by half, and upon using a potion or receiving healing, your character will take damage. Once again, this can be dispelled by bishops. We can start to see why bishops are valued so highly in this fight now. The third attack slams the staff into the ground, dealing physical damage and inflicting poison. Rex can use this spell and at the same time cause confusion, which is represented by a skull with spinning eyes that floats above the character. In this state, all input directions are reversed, and once again can be dispelled by bishops. At the start of this phase, everyone should start on the leftmost side of the map to focus damage on Solomon. After the raid finishes off Solomon, the entire raid should move to the right side of the map to fight Rex. As soon as Rex is defeated, the party should make their way to the left side of the map again to prepare for the next phase. Phase 3 introduces Hugin, the statue on the left side of the map next to Solomon. Hugin is a fire-based statue, making it resistant to fire and weak to ice. He has an HP pool of 450 million and has 2 attacks and 6 skills. Hugin's first attack inflicts fire-based damage with a slow. The second deals an AoE attack, recognizable by markers on the ground, that can also stun. The 6 skills it casts are all either buffs or debuffs. It can cast Seal, Weakness, Physical Attack, and Magic Defense up. Weakness is indicated by sweat drops appearing above the character's head and makes it so that you cannot jump for a certain period of time. This is curable of course by Bishop's Dispel or by using an all-cure potion. It is important to know that even in this state, vertical movement skills and teleport type skills can still be used. The important skills that it can cast however are physical, magical, and all damage reflect buffs. Damage reflect is the most annoying and most important mechanic of this whole fight. This is quite a long buff to explain, but to break it down simply, there can be 3 indicators of damage reflection. The first is a purple sword and shield, the second is a purple skull and shield surrounded by spikes, and the third is a purple sword and shield surrounded by spikes. This status has 2 effects, Attack Ignore and Attack Reflection. Attack Ignore makes it so that the damage taken by the caster is reduced to 1. And Attack Reflection deals a fixed amount of damage back to the attacker. The damage reflected changes from minimal damage on minor bosses to instant deaths. There are skills that ignore damage reflect, but these didn't exist in the release of Pink Bean. To deal with this mechanic, positioning is important. The kill order in this fight should be Solomon, Hugin, then Rex. This phase starts off with everyone focusing damage on Solomon. The strat here is to stay behind the orbs on the side towards the edge of the map from the pedestals of Solomon and Rex's statue. If you stay behind these orbs, then Hugin won't activate damage reflection and you can hit them without worry of getting one-shot by your own attack. After defeating Solomon, the party then focuses down Hugin, making sure to chain crash him so it won't activate damage reflection. Crashing is a shortened term used to describe one of Warrior's moves, Magic Crash, which has the chance to cancel all enemy buffs and prevent them from casting new buffs. At max rank, this skill has a 100% chance of succeeding, preventing them from casting new buffs for 20 seconds. To chain crash means to chain these magic crashes back to back to keep the statue permanently silenced. To do this, warriors must be positioned on top of the platform right next to the statue. This way, the party can deal damage without worrying about the reflection. As of patch version 106 on February 2012 however, chain crashing is no longer viable since the skill got changed and now has a timer before they can be crashed again. I will still go over the rest of the fight with crashing as a strategy though, as it was what was used back then. After Hugin is down, the party then moves right to kill Rex. Phase 4 introduces Moonin, the statue on the right side of the map next to Rex. Moonin is the ice counterpart of Hugin, making it weak to fire and resistant to ice. Moonin has an HP pool of 450 million like Hugin, and has 2 attacks and 2 skills. The first attack is an ice-based attack that inflicts darkness. The second is a physical attack that inflicts the confusion debuff. The first skill that I can cast is a map-wide seduce, which is a debuff represented by puppet strings floating above the character. In this state, your character cannot perform any actions and are forced to move in a specific pattern. As expected, this can be dispelled by bishops. A very important piece of information to know prior to heading into this fight is that Moonin will only cast the spell if there are any players within close proximity of them. The cutoff for proximity is at the base of Rex's statue, so again, like Hugin, to avoid the skill, the party must stay to the right side of this orb, otherwise Moonin will cast Seduction and the run would be ruined. The second skill is called Map Ban. This skill boots a player out of the room, making them have to re-enter. When this boss first came out, this skill caused some confusion. The actual cast of this skill is quite rare, and since the mechanics were not yet known, some people who had map ban casted on them had assumed they'd been kicked from the party. To make this worse, right outside the room is an NPC that takes you out of the map, and so a lot of players mistakenly click the NPC, leaving the room. The kill order in this phase should be Rex, Moonin, Solomon, then Hugin. This phase starts off with everyone on the right side of the map. Both the melee and range parties can start by focusing damage on Rex. After defeating Rex, only the range party should attack Moonin, making sure that they stay behind Rex's orb. Melee parties needed to just sit and watch. Do not hit or crash Moonin as that will activate the mass deduction. After the range classes had defeated Moonin, the whole party makes their way to the very left side of the map, completely ignoring Hugin. Once everyone is behind Solomon's orb, you can start focusing Solomon, and then Hugin, once again chain crashing Hugin so that it doesn't cast any damage reflect. Right before Hugin falls however, all DPS will stop as the range parties move to the right side to set up for the next phase. During this time, chain crashing will still be occurring, only the DPS stops. Once the range parties reach the right side, Hugin can be defeated by the melee parties. This is important because as soon as Hugin falls, phase 5 begins. Phase 5 introduces Ariel, the middle statue. This statue is the strongest and has the highest health out of all the statues at 600 million. Ariel is resistant to fire, ice, lightning, as well as being immune to holy, making poison the only element able to harm it. Ariel has 6 skills in normal mode and 8 in chaos mode. The first skill allows her to heal herself and nearby statues by 200k. This isn't a big deal in the grand scheme of things. The second skill allows her to cast Undead and Dispel. After Dispel is casted, Dark Knights would have to rebuff everyone with Hyper Body. The third skill summons a poisonous fog around the map. The fourth allows her to cast Super Weapon and Magic Defense up, making her extremely tanky. And the fifth skill is Genesis, the same mobbing skill that bishops have. Rotating markers on the ground will show where the beams will launch, but Genesis cannot hit the top platform. And finally, the sixth skill, also the last skill you'll have to worry about in normal mode, is Meteors. Ariel will summon a meteorite that falls at a random location on the map, which will bring characters to 1 HP and 1 MP if hit, and also stunning them. Phase 5 begins by the melee parties being on the left side and the range parties being on the right side as pre-position at the end of Phase 4. The melee parties will focus Solomon, then Hugin, and the range parties will focus Rex, then Moonin. The kill order in this phase is a bit ambiguous as both melee and range parties will just focus down their respective statues. However, every statue apart from Ariel needs to be defeated before both melee and range parties start to attack Ariel. Once again, we use chain crashing to prevent Ariel from casting her weapon and magic defense up buff. The real difficulty starts in Phase 6, as you are finally faced with Pink Bean. Pink Bean has by far the highest HP and defense in the fight, sitting at 2.1 billion HP with 70% damage resist. Pink Bean has numerous amounts of skills, the first being a full screen AoE move that looks like an upside down version of Genesis. If you get hit, you take around 11,000 damage and are also stunned. The second move is a skill that resembles Bishop's Big Bang. This move can easily be avoided by going behind or away from Pink Bean. The third skill is an attack with a megaphone that rains treble clef notes near itself and causes seduction. This note is considered a normal attack, so your character can dodge it. There's a possibility that 2 of the notes may overlap at the same time, dealing massive damage. The fourth attack is a tail slam, summoning projectiles that look like mini beans shooting up from the ground. Your HP and MP will be set to 1, and you'll also be inflicted with the sealed debuff. This move hits the whole map, and the way to avoid this is to jump upward to the platform at the top of the room, which is a safe spot. The fifth move summons 12 mini beans which cast physical attack nullification as soon as they are summoned. These mini beans have a low HP at 1.5 million, so they aren't a threat themselves, but the real problem they cause is the nullification. These mini beans get between you and Pink Bean, blocking your moves. If you have an aggro or knockback skill, you can use it on these mini beans, being careful not to knock back Pink Bean itself. Finally, Pink Bean can cast Undead, and of course Damage Reflection. This Damage Reflection is the main reason that defeating Pink Bean was so difficult and took so long. On release, this Damage Reflection buff lasted 30 seconds and cycled every 40 seconds. However, this has been lowered many times in order to nerf the fight. Now this buff only lasts 10 seconds and cycles every 78 seconds. This was devastating as it deals a vicious 30,000 damage, making it almost always an instant one-shot. This move also buys Pink Bean a lot of time for the timer to run down. Remember, this whole fight has 7.65 billion HP and a timer of 60 minutes, a very tight window, and so DPM would have to be extremely optimized. At the start of this phase, all members should be on the top platform pre-positioned from the last phase. Pink Bean will drop and one warrior will crash and position Pink Bean to the right side of the map, keeping Pink Bean facing to the right. Depending on which way Pink Bean is facing, it has access to different moves from its kit. After Pink Bean is positioned, all attackers will then start attacking Pink Bean. It is extremely important that Pink Bean is chain crashed to prevent damage reflection or any other self-buff it can cast on itself. Pink Bean was an interesting case. Before the Big Bang patch in 2010, which reworked a lot of MapleStory's core systems, it was essentially a boss designed to not be beaten. This boss treated highly geared players who sunk hundreds of hours into the game like a joke. As a result, it took place 729 days after the release of Pink Bean to defeat it for the first time. Pink Bean itself could easily dish out moves that dealt 10 to 20k damage. At the time of release, apart from Warrior, jobs like Night Lord or Bowmaster had to spend a lot of effort in getting their HP pools up from the start of the game, only to barely surpass 5,000. Literally even touching Pink Bean back then would kill them. Unless a Bishop had their Resurrection skill available, which was on a cooldown of 30 minutes, players would have needed to use an item from the cash shop called Wheel of Fate to revive in place. As mentioned previously, the total HP of the fight was 7.65 billion, and the time given to reduce all of that HP was a measly 1 hour. At the time of release, the max damage was 199,999, and there were virtually no skills that could even reach that number apart from Marksman's Snipe, Hero's Panic, and Shadow's Assassination. To put into perspective how truly ridiculous this was, let's use Horntail as a comparison. Horntail was the previous boss added before Pink Bean. This boss had a timer of 12 hours and took place an average of 2 to 3 hours to defeat it, even while exploiting skills that would break Horntail's mechanics. Horntail had an HP pool of 2.75 billion. So considering the almost 5 billion HP difference, a restriction of 1 hour, this fight truly was not meant to be cleared by any means at the time of release. Despite this level of difficulty, someone had asked if they planned to lower the difficulty of Pink Bean, but they replied that they had no intention of nerfing it. They thought it would be defeated within 4 months of release, but it still hadn't, so they said they would wait a little longer to see if any readjustments were needed. To add onto this, Nexon didn't even implement Pink Bean's body in the initial release of the fight. There was a bug back then that if the raid team did somehow defeat all of the phases until the last phase, the game would crash. When the management was asked about it, they mentioned that the main body of Pink Bean wasn't even implemented yet and that they will hold an emergency meeting. Within a few days, this was fixed. Upon defeating Pink Bean, it will start crying and build a door to another world to run away. Pink Bean's loot table has been changed over the years, but initially it dropped gear that was part of the reverse gear set. These were powerful weapons and armor which dropped directly from Pink Bean. This gear was valuable, but they could be further upgraded using the Rock of Time, another drop from Pink Bean, to obtain Timeless gear, some of the best weapons and armor in the game at that time. In addition, it also dropped one eye accessory, the Black Bean Mark, which was better than the other common eye accessory at the time, Aquatic Letter from the boss Zakum. In 2015, Nexon added 2 more accessories to Pink Bean's loot table, the Golden Clover Belt, a level 140 belt, and the Pink Bean Holy Grail, a level 140 pocket item. The Golden Clover was a good belt, but stat-wise was inferior than Tyrant's Belt, a drop by the boss Magnus. Though Tyrant's Belt was better, it did cost a lot more investment to upgrade than the Golden Clover Belt, hence why this accessory still has good value. The Pink Holy Grail was a valuable item as there weren't that many pocket accessories, although it was contested by Rifle Bullet, a very rare item that is unobtainable nowadays due to it coming from an event. By the time 2020 had come around, Reverse and Timeless gear had been outscaled, and an update in 2020 removed these items from Pink Bean's loot table. The other drops remained the same. Even after 2 years post-release, before July 2010, teams were nowhere close to killing Pink Bean. It simply had too much health for the amount of time you were allowed to hit it for. However, this all changed in one singular update. Arguably the biggest update in MapleStory history, Big Bang. In fact, this update was so big that it divided MapleStory's history into 2 eras, pre-Big Bang from 2003 to 2010, and post-Big Bang from 2010 to current. The update had a lot of stuff to go over, so let's just TLDR the important parts. 1. The XP required for each level got reduced drastically. This is actually way more impactful than you would think, as before Big Bang there were very few players who were actually at the level required to even take on Pink Bean. Due to this change, many more players were allowed to try endgame content. 2. The max damage cap got increased from 199,999 to 999,999. And 3. Balance changes. Job balance before Big Bang was not the greatest, and Big Bang tweaked the weaker jobs so that they were more aligned with the stronger ones. Very shortly after Big Bang, the world first kill on Pink Bean occurred. It's true that the first kill of Pink Bean was done 729 days after its release. However, this is only the case when looking at KMS times. In KMS, Pink Bean was released on July 17, 2008 instead of the middle of 2009 on GMS. Technically, the world first kill was done on the 16th of July 2010 on KMS servers, hence the 729 days. However, there's no footage of this kill, and GMS is what most people refer to when talking generally about MapleStory, and there is footage of the GMS kill. The GMS world first Pink Bean kill occurred on August 24, 2010 on Windia's first generation. Upon defeating Pink Bean, the server was notified displaying the message, "Oh, the exploration team who has defeated Pink Bean with undying fervor. You are the true victors of time." This used to occur every time an expedition had defeated Pink Bean, but over the years this no longer became an accomplishment due to scaling and power creep, so Nexon removed this. Way back when Pink Bean hadn't been defeated, there would be instances where GMs in the game or Grandmasters would spawn a nerfed version of Pink Bean in the middle of the most populated cities as a prank. It would be impossible to kill, but was a fun interaction between GMs and the community players at the time. Pink Bean quickly became a community favorite due to its cute design and animations, and over the years, Nexon has released many in-game events, pop-up shops, and merch for this little bean. Throughout the years, Pink Bean has been known as MapleStory's mascot, but not many nowadays know or remember about the days where it was the most difficult and ridiculous boss in the game. Having insanely high HP, instant kill mechanics, numerous debuffs, this boss is still one of the most infuriating fights for mid-level players, although it's nowhere near where it used to be. I hope this video has provided an entertaining insight to old MapleStory, and thank you for watching.